Have you ever watched one of those YouTube videos where these celebrities have the Google autocomplete interview? What they'll do is they'll type in a root keyword over on Google, and then it will autocomplete it for them, and they have to answer each one of those questions. And it got me to thinking. I get a lot of questions for some people, but there are probably a lot of you out there that hesitate to ask because maybe you feel like it's not that great of a question, or maybe you're like, you know what, I'll figure it out on my own. So today I'm going to save you the trouble, and I'm going to show you some of the top questions when it comes to self-publishing and using the Google autocomplete. So make sure you stay tuned. What's happening? It's Dale here, and I'm just tickled to death. You took a little bit of time out your day to spend a little bit of time with me to talk about my favorite thing in self-publishing. And before we do jump into things, I just want to give a big thank you and a big shout out to the first subscribers of the YouTube podcast channel. Are you not subscribed yet? Have you not come over and join me every Monday now that we're doing the podcast recordings there? Well, you can do that. All you got to do is go over to dalelinks.com/YouTube podcast. Again, that's dalelinks.com/YouTube podcast. I'll leave a link inside the show notes so that way you can get yourself on over there and subscribe right away and join all the fun that we have. And all right, so I get lots of questions, and everything from the most basic things of what does KDP stand for to something a bit more in depth, like how do I market and promote my Werebear Shapeshifter book with only $100 of budget per month? Wow, that was rather specific. But what I wanted to kind of do is I wanted to see what the vast majority of people are asking online right now. And there's a lot of just really great questions that we need to kind of consider. And so that's where I wanted to go into Google, see what would be brought up, and maybe we can kind of churn and burn. So this is going to be a little bit of a different podcast than we normally do. So while I'm talking here and you're listening to this in the podcast, believe it or not, there is actually some visual elements to this. So you're going to want to make sure you go over to the YouTube podcast for this one. So let's get it started out with probably one of the most basic questions here. I started out with what self-publish. Okay, so we got this broad keyword match. And with that broad keyword match, it brought up, looks like about a dozen different questions. The very first one is what self-publishing companies to avoid. Oh, this is a loaded question. In fact, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus at this point. What I would say is the best way to find a good self-publishing company to use is through a great resource called the Alliance of Independent Authors. They are a nonprofit organization run by indie authors for indie authors. And they have something that's completely free for everybody to use. It's called the Ally Watchdog Service. And they essentially go through and they look at specific businesses and they see if they align with the ethical standards that they have put out that really covers your hind end as an indie author. So if you ever want to know which ones to avoid, go over to dalelinks.com/watchdog or just search up the Alliance of Independent Authors Watchdog Services. All right, so this next one is equally as it's going to be a little bit tough for me to answer this one, which is what self-publishing company is the best? Now, when it comes to self-publishing, I will say you can't go wrong with Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, Ingram Spark, and if you use any other aggregates that would publish for you, Draft Digital's fantastic, Smashwords. And if you've got a little bit of a discretionary budget, you can consider other companies like, say, BookBaby, where you have to invest up front, but you collect all your revenue, and other companies that are very similar to BookBaby, like Publish Drive, where you have to pay, like, say, $20 per month in order to distribute, say, 2 books, I think it is. So what self-publishing company is going to be best? It's going to be a personal preference. You got to test them out, see what works for you. All right, next one is what's self-publishing? We're going to go ahead and keep moving on that one. I think we already know. What does self-publishing mean? Okay, we can skip that one. What is self-publishing a book? So for the sake of keeping this whole topic on course here, that way we're not completely running off the track, I want to make sure that we're going to go ahead and answer some of the questions that are probably like less low tier like that, because what self-publishing, if you happen to be listening to this podcast, you probably already know what self-publishing is. So let's go ahead and jump into those ones. So I'm going to skip forward on a few of them here. All right. What does self-publishing cost? So this one's a pretty loaded question. All right. It can be as low as free. Yeah. And I know there's going to be a lot of editors, book cover designers, formatters, everybody like that. They're going to be cringing because they're going to be like, no, you shouldn't do it yourself. You should never do it 100% free. You have to invest in it. But the fact of the matter is you can technically publish a book for free. Should you? That's certainly debatable. I wouldn't recommend it. So generally speaking, you're going to need to look at the niche that you're in, and you need to be very realistic looking at that. Okay, can I be able to make a cover like that? If you can make a cover like that, fantastic. You can save some money. But in most instances, you're probably not well-versed in Photoshop or book cover design or typography, which is huge because just because you can get a free cover on Canva or you've done something in GIMP doesn't necessarily it's going to be the best, most representative model. And that's where you're going to want to hire out that. So that way you don't miss out on the opportunity to attract more readers and keep them coming back and purchasing more. So what does self-publishing cost? It can be $0. It can be as much as say $1,000, $2,000, $10,000. It just depends on what your discretionary budget is and your time and what you're willing to kind of put into it. All righty. What is Self-Publishing School? Okay, so I'm going to answer this one ever so briefly here. Self-Publishing School is actually a company that is run and owned by Chandler Bolt. Chandler and I are kind of acquaintances. I actually got the chance to hang out with him year before last out in Venice Beach. Tremendous guy. It is a huge company. I will give you a fair warning in that when you go and you get something free from them or you're going to say buy one of their products, I guarantee you'll be downsold, you'll be upsold, you'll be side sold. They're going to keep trying to sell you some stuff. If you are completely like, whoa, I hate being sold on, self-publishing school is probably not going to be your jam. However, there have been many people that have enjoyed it, and there are plenty of people that really stand behind it. Have I used self-publishing school? No. That was not one of the courses that I started out with. So by the time that I had learned all that I wanted to, self-publishing school didn't seem like a good fit for me. All right, let's take a look at the next root keyword here. And the root keyword this time, we did what self-publish this time? We're going to do how self-publish. How to self-publish a book. In fact, there's actually the next one is how to self-publish on Amazon. So this one's something I cover on a regular basis, and I could talk about how to self-publish, but to be honest with you, I have over 110 different podcast episodes telling you how to self-publish a book, and quite simply. Now, the thing that I noticed though is inside this autocomplete, you will see that they recommend how to self-publish a book in Canada, UK, so region-specific stuff. So this is where I need to kind of address this. It is accessible to most everyone. Most everyone. Okay. Amazon, KDP, pretty much if you got a pulse and you can set up an account, you can be able to distribute through them. However, there are some limitations. Like for instance, Aggregate Publisher Drafted Digital does bar a few regions. And it's one of those cases that they have to do that in order to cover their rear end because there have been some black hat tactics in that specific region. So they have to be very specific. Otherwise, they're going to lose their rear end because someone stole the rights, uploaded to Drafted Digital, and they're going to get sued. So that's going to be a big, dirty little thing there. I like how it reiterates the one question that I brought up. How much does it cost to self-publish? Hopefully I covered that one. It's super, super vague. Now, how to self-publish a cookbook. This is one that is most interesting, and I want to kind of hang out here for just a second. Believe it or not, there's a huge misconception in that people have heard, and there's some truth to it. So some people have heard that you could take recipes and you can use recipes and it's not plagiarizing, because it's considered, quote unquote, a list. So you can take that list and repurpose it. But you can't go and directly lift someone's recipe and not change it a little bit and make it a little bit different, because that's, first of all, plagiarism. You shouldn't be doing that. And the next thing is The instructions need to be 100% different because it's the list of items, not the instructions, that you can be able to take, copy, and paste on over there. So when you're publishing your cookbook, I would really, really recommend that if you're doing it, make sure you put in together unique recipes as well as instructions. And you're not just doing it because you're like, ooh, I heard someone made tens of thousands of dollars last month for doing keto cookbooks. That's all well and good, but if you're just kind of hammering out the same old stuff, you're just adding to the noise. So I wanted to kind of get that one out the way. That was always been a misunderstanding. I've heard some people say, well, it's a list, therefore I can copy it. Yeah, you can copy lists. Should you? I'd say not. All right. Moving on to the next prompt here. When self-publish. When to self-publish. Here's a good one. When to self-publish. When you're ready. Literally, if you wanted to publish a book right this second, you could do it. Let's just say you're like, you know what? I've got this 1-page poetry, this poem that I want to publish, and I want to publish this right now. You could do it right now. Oh, you don't want to do it now? You want to do it tomorrow? Do it. There's a lot of times that people get hung up on this small detail. And this small detail is, should I publish on a Monday? Should I publish on a Tuesday? I hear if I publish on a Saturday and I say my prayers and I blow out my birthday candles, something magical is going to happen. Look, when it comes to self-publishing, publish it when it's right. And when it's right, that means that you've taken the time to start up the hype train, build awareness about your launch, set a launch date, continue building awareness until that launch date comes, and then you're ready to go. Now, if you're the type of person you're like, that's too much work for me, Dale. No, totally cool. Just hit the publish button, because you publishing on a Monday with no marketing and promotion or any build up is going to be the same thing as you doing it on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, so on and so forth. Now, some people can make the argument that most people are going to be online and most active between Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but that doesn't always apply, especially to specific niches. So when it comes to when you're going to do it when it's right. So next one here. Copyright when self-publishing. All right, so this one's a great one. When it comes to copywriting, believe it or not, you kind of got, and I'm going to use quotes on this one, a poor man's copyright. When you do your very first keystroke or you write your very first word in that notebook, okay, that is your intellectual property. No one can come in between you and that property unless you have something contractually binding and you're, say, writing it on your employer's time or something like that. You have a general copyright. Now, the problem comes in that if someone steals your IP, that they say plagiarize your book, you're obviously going to be mad. You're going to want to, do litigation. You're going to want to take them to court, sue them, probably get your money back, all that type of thing, or even stop them from using your work. Now, you're probably saying, but I got the copyright. I've got a virtual timestamp over on my Microsoft Word document. It's all well and good, but once you get into court, they want you to have proof of copyright. So this is where you're going to need to reach out to your local registration, regional. So for instance, here it's copyright.org. And so if it's overseas, figure out if you're in the UK where you need to do it. If you're in Romania, you need to see where you can do it. Registering that copyright will help you out in the instances of legal battles, because as soon as you show up into that court and you try to present your case to a judge, they're going to be like, that's a virtual timestamp. That doesn't count. They want to see that you've registered that. And it runs like $55, $65 here in the United States. It might vary per region. It could be more expensive. It could be less expensive. Should you get a copyright, I would recommend, if you're brand new to the business, there's better things to invest in for now. Because the reality of the situation is, how are you going to enforce that copyright should it get stolen? How are you going to do it? And you can probably file a DMCA, but let's just say that you do a DMCA takedown notice on them. They decide, no, we're going to go ahead and keep that up. Will you be able to afford to take them into court? And if that's the case, great, file that copyright. The next instance of getting a copyright is if it gives you peace of mind having that, almost like an insurance policy of sorts. But I always recommend, you're new to the business, that $55 to $65 should go towards things like editing, formatting, book cover design, so on and so forth. When you start to build out your business, then consider filing in the copyright. All right. Is it a good idea to self-publish? Of course it is. Why not to self-publish? Oh, here we go. So this is a loaded question right here. I like this one. Why not to self-publish? I'll tell you this. There's many reasons you shouldn't. So let's just say, for instance, your heart has always been on wanting to get a traditional publishing deal. You may not want to do that. Again, I kind of said this before I even got on the air. I covered this with the live viewers over in the YouTube podcast, another shameless self-promotion, that when you self-publish something, you put it out there and it flops, and you go to approach yourself with a traditional publishing deal, there's going to be some companies that look down on the fact that you self-publish, or they'll even judge you based on the results that you had. So if your lifelong dreams to get into traditional publishing, you may not want to do self-publishing, or at least understand it's going to be a long, hard road to the top. So there you go. We're going to get a couple little other auto-suggest things here, and before we wrap up, and let's go into the next auto-suggest. All right, so let's do who self-publish. Who should I self-publish with? I think I kind of covered that one just a little bit. For me, I'm just going to reiterate this one. If you're a new author, consider doing Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing just because of its reach and its royalty structure. I think it's one of the best ones out there, and it has a good, easy to understand user interface. So that's who you should start with. Now, who should you finish with? It remains to be seen. It's going to be what, your goals are. Because ultimately, my goals aren't going to be the same as yours. Let's say, for instance, you detest Amazon, and you're like, nope, don't want to go there. Then you may want to consider self-fulfillment, going through your own website. So who to self-publish with? There's a general answer I'm going to give, Amazon KDP, but comes with an asterisk. Depends on your goals and what you want to get out of the business. So, self-published authors who made it big. Believe it or not, I actually did this for a video about a year ago where I talked about the 10 famous authors who were formerly self-published. And I've said this before, E.L. James is like the poster child of self-publishing before she got her traditional publishing deal. Andy Weir is another big success story. There are a lot of folks, even like Stephen King, he self-published his own content well into his teens before he even had a traditional publishing contract. So who to self-publish with? It's going to be on who you want to. And the self-published authors who made it big show that it is possible to be successful on another level. Hey, as we start to kind of come around the bend, I, of course, just want to bring your attention to the fact that, we're doing these podcasts live, recorded over on the podcast channel on YouTube. You're going to head over to dalelinks.com/YouTube podcast. Don't be confused. This is not the main channel where we have the short form content, a bunch of editing and everything else that's really fancy. This one's a little bit more stripped down in your face, and it's kind of a fun way for us to connect. All right. Going through some of the Google Autocomplete was just a fun way for us to kind of cover some of these things. So if you ever find yourself, man, I got a question, post it on a video. Post it on a video over there, or you can reach out to me over on Discord. It's like literally having my phone number going into my Discord server. You just go over to dalelinks.com/Discord to join there and just tag me at self-pub with Dale, and any kind of questions you have, no matter how crazy it is. Trust me, I've heard some really wild questions before. It's going to take a bit to shock me now. Hey, subscribe or follow me on your preferred podcasting platform, and do me a favor, leave a review. It would mean the world to me. Join us next week. We're actually going to be talking about the problem with book review sites for authors. Whoa. It's not what you're thinking. You're going to want to make sure you tune into next week's episode. So till then, this is Self-Publishing with Dale. Take care now.